All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Coffee with the Freight Coach. My name is Chris Jolly. I am your host, and I am the Freight Coach. Before we jump into the episode, as always, thank you guys so much for coming out and listening to this podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show that I do. And what I mean by that is I only speak to transportation professionals on this show, as well as my weekday live show, because I want to talk to the individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. I do have one small favor to ask. If you get value, and I know you will, but if you get value in what you hear today and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the show, you guys. Share it out there to your network, because at the end of the day, this is how we grow. But most importantly, this is how we help more and more people, is because if you saw value, your network's going to see value as well. I got a very special guest for you guys here today, and this is going to be on a video component as well. I don't know if I'm going to be uploading this onto my YouTube channel, but I know my friends at SPI Logistics are going to be doing that. And who knows, maybe I'll start doing that and adding a video component into this podcast. But we're here to talk about finance, right? Like, we're here to talk about the financial health of organizations, and really how are you balancing any of that stuff, whether you're in an up market, a down market. How are you taking those times and investing in the future? So with that being said, I got my man James Lemon here today. He is the VP of Finance and Chief Financial Officer of SPI Logistics. James, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks a lot for having me. I mean, I've listened to all the podcasts you've done with all the people here, and now I'm excited to finally be on here and get to share some knowledge.
No, man, it's great being, because I like, for those who see the video up there, you get James has a phenomenal background of the beautiful British Columbia area, and having the opportunity to come up and be in the SPI offices back in August and everything was great. And we recorded a bunch of podcasts while we were up there, and unfortunately there were some technical difficulties with the one that we got, but I'm glad that there was, because now we get to talk again, man, because it's like,
Exactly.
as everything gets up and running. I mean, we ran into each other and in Vegas, and we got to have dinner with you and Anita and everything. And but it's always good just to sit down with you, man, because I always enjoy learning about every aspect of the industry, right? Because like, at the end of the day, I know freight, really. Like, when it boils down, I know a lot of what not to do in freight. And there's so many different components to the business that's out there. And I'm on a mission to understand my finances at a lot greater level. And it's like, I look back on it in going to school, and I'm like, man, I wish I would have got a degree in accounting. Like, truly, because I feel like understanding your money is what is, I would say it's very overlooked out there. Because I actually interviewed my CPA for the podcast, James, and he was talking about that. He's like, the amount of people that don't know about their financials is it's almost alarming that's out there. So like, how did you get your start in the finance world?
The funny story is, so I grew up in hard times. I didn't have my parents didn't have a lot of money. Grew up in poverty, so when you take those aptitude tests at school,
Mhm.
it tells you what potential things you could be good at. And so on mine, accounting came up as one of them, and it had the highest income. So I was like, well, that's what I want to be, because I want to make a lot of money.
Heck yeah.
And so in grade 12, my school offered an accounting course, and I was like, well, let's give it a try and see if I actually am good at it and like it. And turns out ended up winning there was an award for the best student in accounting, and I won that award. And I was like, well, I guess I'm doing this. And then got my degree, got my CPA, and I mean, now I'm here.
Dude, it's, accounting for me it was the one course that I actually like, math related, that I actually excelled in, because there was only one way of doing it, right? And because like, I was actually just talking about this on my live show. Like, I mean, I struggled in math. Like, I struggled in algebra, I struggled in all that stuff, because I'm like, what's the point? Like, and then FYI, to this day, I have yet to quote a shipment that I needed to find out the value of the letter A. All right. I'm just throwing that out there. But when it came down to the accounting aspect of things, like, I actually, it was weird. I was able to actually slow it down a little bit and really understand how to work it. And because like, I have 2 degrees in management. And I'm like, looking back, I'm like, man, if I could do it all over again, I would have got my associate's degree in accounting, and I would have got my bachelor's degree in management, because there's so much value in understanding the financial health of your organization, because it's like, how many people learn the hard way, right? Where they make $10,000, but they think they can spend $10,000. They don't account for taxes. They don't understand that there's actual assets that you can depreciate to lower your taxable income and everything else that's out there. And then they get in a bind, they don't pay their taxes, and then all of a sudden they get slapped with a massive bill that they can't afford, and then they go out of business. They're like, I got to fold up. I can't pay that.
Absolutely. And I mean, we're going to see in our industry, you're going to see this coming to a head as things get tighter. You're going to the companies who have a good knowledge of what their accounting is are going to thrive and they're going to stay in business. And those ones that you're talking about that have no idea like what they can expense or what their expenses even are in a month.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, when your customer says, "Oh, sorry, I can't afford to pay you this month," and you look at your bank account and it's negative, and you're like, "Well, how did that happen? I'm making all this money." But I mean, if you don't have money coming in, it's not really your money until you actually have the money.
Yeah.
And if your customers they end up in hard times, that can put you in hard times. And if you're not prepared for it, it can sink you real quick.
I think that's one of the biggest value adds about having my agency with SPI and working with SPI is the financial health of the organization, but the steps that you guys put in place for vetting customers to see, are they financially secure? Because you go out there and you're trying to develop business, right? You're cold calling or you're cold emailing, you're knocking on doors, whatever it is, to get a customer. And then you get that customer, and then you want to think that everybody's good, right? Like you want to think like, oh, these guys are going to be great. All this freight's going to be moving. And you don't have anybody to check that in some instances, right? And then you get yourself in a pinch quick where it's like like you think it's great because they're giving you a ton of freight, right? Like you're getting a ton of stuff coming your way, and then they don't pay. And then it's always like, oh, hey, we're good. We'll keep giving you freight. And then 30 days turns into 60, turns into 90, and all of a sudden you're in a really bad spot. And, one thing I love is like the steps that you guys have in place where it's just like, even having receivables insurance, because I know that that's not cheap to have receivables insurance that are out there, but that has to be, from your perspective, probably one of the best investments that you guys have made out there. Because how many times have you seen that in your career, James, where it's like, hey, these customers come out hot and heavy, and then 30 turns into 60 and 90 and everything else?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it was about 5, 6 years ago now that we finally decided to take the plunge and invest in the credit insurance because we were just getting to a size where, I mean, knock on wood, we haven't had any major customers go out of business on us yet. But we were starting to delve into those customers where they're becoming a significant portion of your AR, and if something were to happen, it would have sunk us.
Yeah.
So we made the decision that regardless of the cost, we needed to make sure, not just for ourselves, but for all of our agents, that if something bad were to happen, yeah, it would be a little bit of a speed bump, but we're gonna come out stronger on the other side because we're gonna have that protection of insurance. And I mean, that's what insurance is there for.
Yeah.
You hope you never have to use it, but it's there if you need it.
No, and I think I mean, man, it's like, because like I've talked about this, and fortunately, it was a lot of money at the time, because like I got stiffed out of, it was like just about $5,000, a couple years ago, and I was like, fortunately, I had put money aside. Fortunately, I was saving for a rainy day in the event that that happened, but like, add a couple more zeros to that, and that bankrupts people. And then because again, it's just like I feel like you described it best with insurance, and I truly live by this in business. I would rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it, because and it's even like with cargo insurance and everything else, everybody thinks like, oh, it'll never happen until they're on the hook for $100,000 bill. And then I would, argue most people don't have $100,000 laying around to pay for that as an added expense to their already large P&L that's out there. And, having insurance and having that security behind it. Yeah. I mean, I don't know of anybody who loves shelling out money for insurance
Oh,
every single month,
absolutely not.
but it's going to be great to have in the event that somebody does unfortunately stiffy because not everybody out there is good. Not everybody out there has your best interest in mind.
And I mean, sometimes it's not even their fault. It
Yeah.
just, that- hey, that's business. There's gonna be great companies. Like you look back 20 years ago, some of the Fortune 500 companies that everybody thought were great, but things happen, tides change, and all of a sudden, a lot of those companies don't exist anymore. Nobody thought they were going to go out of business, but they did, and you don't want to be left holding the bag.
Yeah, man, there's so much of that too. And because like I like this is the stuff that keeps me up at night. Like honestly, is I'm just like, obviously nothing's perfect and you're gonna make mistakes and things are gonna happen, but it's just like what are those things that you can do to protect yourself, right? Like because there is, you look at some of those large companies that are no longer around. Why are they no longer around? Is it their failure to adapt to a change? Like I think Blockbuster is, because we're pretty much the same age.
Yeah,
Blockbuster's like the most glaring one for most of us who grew up going to a video store. And for those of you who are younger, that's actually how you used to watch movies back in the day. But Blockbuster is one of those things. And then because you hear about it too, right? Because I think that they had an opportunity to do a streaming service of some sort, or it was something with a Netflix style
they
thing.
actually were in talks of buying it.
Okay, that's what it was. But Blockbuster
Yeah,
was going to buy Netflix.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, in the early stages, but that was back before they had figured out the pivot to streaming. Because I mean, Netflix started as a DVD sharing service.
Yeah. No, yeah, I remember that. And but it is, it's one of those things where, failure to adapt, or is there an outside force that's going to eventually put you under, and it's just like, I just look at that because it's like so many people out there. I mean, whether you're an agent or you're running a business or because if you are an agent, you are running a business, right? Like I got to pay taxes on the money that I make, right? Like I got expenditures and what can I do to align myself to kind of minimize a lot of that risk and that exposure that's out there? Because, and that's one of the things like I love working with you guys about a lot is like, yeah, when things are great, I think everybody's happy. But most importantly, it's when things go wrong, like when there's damages to loads or when there's things out there, you guys are on top of your stuff. And it's not a, hey, you guys got to pay for this or anything like that when it comes down to insurance and everything else. And that's what I love because it's like it gives me an opportunity to just operate and execute. And that partnerships that's there. I think that that's the biggest value add out there to anybody who's looking to go out on their own and become an agent is we have the best of the best insurance. You guys are constantly investing and looking for new innovative ways to give agents the best tools to succeed in any freight market. And it is very, very evident by like if whatever I need as an agent, I'm literally one phone call away from, whether it be you, Mike, anybody who is like, hey, this is what's going on. And you guys are always like, we'll look into it. We'll look into it. I mean, especially from a tech perspective, right? Because you guys were at Manifest, you guys are out there scouting all the time. What is coming up? How can we position our agents for the most success?
Absolutely. I mean, our biggest invest we had two. Our biggest push came from two major sources. One was actually advertising. I mean, it's funny how a little bit of advertising can go a long way, and I mean,
Yeah.
partnering with people like you have been a boon to our business. But the biggest one has been technology. We've probably quadrupled our investment in technology over the last 5 years. And I mean, yeah, it costs a lot of money, but it's 100% worth it because you can streamline things, you can automate things. We never want to automate people out of our business.
Yeah.
We want to automate the mundane things so that our people can do things that are actually interesting.
Yeah.
We don't want to eliminate people because we don't that we've seen how bad that is. You go on some of these apps that only have computer chatbots to talk to, and it takes you half an hour talking to a chatbot to get to a person. We don't want to be that. We want you to call. We want you to, when you call in, you get an actual person on the phone right away who can solve your problem. And our people are empowered to solve those problems because they're not sitting on a keyboard all day
Yeah.
doing the mundane tasks.
Yeah, it's I remember an example here. I mean, spent a couple of months ago by now, but like we had a customer of ours who the receiver didn't have a way to offload the truck, right? And obviously we do a lot of flatbed, so we had to find a third party facility to offload it with a crane, set it on the ground so the customer could come in and take it. And, it was literally one phone call to client care. Hey, this is what we're doing. All they said is this is the information that we need from the company. Let us know. We'll wire the money right away. Like without hesitation. And it's like it's those instances to me, James, because it's like on the flip side of working in a startup environment, you don't have the resources sometimes, right? Like how many people are out there moving freight right now that couldn't cover $1,500 to like, even though the customer was paying us for it, front the $1,500 in that instance to get that job done. Cause these cranes don't work on net 30. It's net pay me right now, or you're not, they're not going to offload you. And it's situations like that from a capital perspective, right? Like the financial risk is almost gone as an agent, right? At the end of the day, we don't take any financial risk that's out there. You guys front, you guys pay the carriers, you guys, from a receivables perspective, you guys are out there getting money from the customers and everything else. But then it's the ancillary expenses that pop up, like a third party facility that you would need to offload a truck or restack pallets and everything else. You guys are there to take care of that stuff. That another thing too, man, is like from a financial perspective, right? Like that doesn't on paper affect Chris Jolly's balance sheet. That affects yours, but that's what comes along with being an agent with SPI.
Absolutely. I mean, that's for a lot there are a lot of small brokers out there who are trying to do it all themselves. They're probably getting into some tough times because I mean money is getting tighter, and that's our biggest selling point for being an agent with our business is we offload all that back end stuff comes off of your plate. You're not you're not worried about calling a customer saying, "Hey, I really need this payment." You're out calling new customers trying to get new business.
Yeah.
You don't want to spend your time dealing with AR and AP and paying carriers and receiving money. You want to be spending your time out there prospecting, getting new customers, getting new opportunities to grow your business.
It was funny. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he started a brokerage. He sold it, and then through some things, he started another brokerage. And I've heard this from multiple friends of mine who've started brokerages. They're like, early on, they're like, when you have to invest in accounting to build out your back office before you can hire more sales reps, they're like, that's the most uncertain time in the business because, you got to bring in 2 to 3 people to process all your invoices at some point. And, because not all factoring companies are going to do all of that and do entirely automate your entire back office. Some of them have those offerings now, but like if you're not factorable for whatever reason or you choose to not take that route, you got to invest in, I'll call them a non-revenue seat, because at the
Mhm.
end of the day, in trucking, in freight brokerage, there are sales reps who generate revenue, and then there's operations who don't technically generate revenue. Yes, they are a part of the revenue process, but at the end of the day, you don't put them in a seat and then they're out there cold calling and developing business. And all of my friends who have started brokerages, they've all said the exact same thing. They're like, if I would have gone back now, taking the agent route would have been so much more beneficial in the early days to not have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in salaries for an accounting perspective.
Absolutely. And I mean, it can be a hard sell sometimes because I mean, when you're doing it yourself, it's yours. It feels like you're in control of everything.
Yeah.
But in the end, when you come and you partner with a brokerage, it's still all yours. It's just you don't have all the headaches that we take off to your plate.
You don't have the headaches that James has.
Exactly.
But from a business development standpoint, I can literally count on one hand the amount of accounts that were already in use. And I've sent over, I'm pretty sure AR knows me by first, middle, and last name by the amount that I've reached out to them to see on a business development perspective. But that's the thing is that's another question that I get all the time is, oh, I'm sure all the accounts are taken. I'm like, far from it, like not even close
Well,
in my
I mean, yeah, we're a big brokerage, but I mean, there's millions of customers out there, and like you think your customer is big, and but really it's just another fish in a gigantic ocean of customers, and it's very rare that we have an instance where a agent has an opportunity and they come to us and say, "Hey, I have this opportunity. Are they taken?" And that they actually are taken.
yeah.
And I mean, in a lot of cases, there's ways we can work out with whoever's doing the business, or if it's decentralized and they're each their own entity, then you get that business anyways.
Yeah. No, for sure. And and then on top of that, right? Because we had a customer that needed EDI capabilities. As they jumped on it right away, it was done. It was up there, and and EDI can be and if you've never done it before, and you're listening to this, it's a process, right? Like there's a ton of testing that's involved in that, and again, it's like having that backing from an infrastructure perspective to where it's like you get to the finish line. Because again, this is the stuff that's not talked about out there in developing business. You get to a finish line and then you're like, you need a $500,000 in cargo insurance to haul your freight. You don't find that out in the first couple of conversations, FYI. It's usually after you've sent over a customer agreement. Oh, FYI, you need this. IT perspective, you need EDI capabilities. You need a fully functional. We need to run testing for 2 weeks. We got to make sure all the transmissions go through properly. That's another reality that kind of comes along with it that you don't know about right away. And I mean, I think about, again, it's hard enough to develop business out there. And then you get to the finish line just to find out I don't have the money to do that, because that's another reality, right? $500,000 in cargo insurance is not cheap, right? Like
Nope.
again, I was talking to another buddy of mine who does this, and he's like, I literally spend almost $1 million a year on insurance as a broker because he has high level stuff, but $1 million a year in insurance alone. So it's like these are the things. It's like as you're growing and building, you don't want like yeah, it's a thought that's in your mind, but it's like you just want to get out there and develop freight, right? Like you just want to get customers, and then this is the side of this business that I don't know of anybody else out there who's talking about this at scale about investing in the infrastructure of your company and having these things, because you will inevitably get to a point where there is you're not going to be able to move their freight because you don't have the money to do this unless you are an agent and you have somebody who has already invested this over the last 40 years and built it up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at, like you said, we went to Manifest. There were a lot of shippers there seeing all these fun technologies that we have. And we've seen more and more customers coming to us saying, hey, I need X, Y, and Z in order for you to move my freight. You need to track every shipment. It needs to be sent to us every 15 minutes and it needs to be done automatically. And if you are just getting started and you're just slowly developing your business and maybe you have one of the best uh PMSs out there, but all those things cost money.
Yeah.
Those aren't free. It's not free to get it set up. Most of the times they have their own portals that you need to pay into in order to get those connections. And if you don't have that on your roadmap for cost, that can sink you really quickly.
Yeah. It's, API, because it is one of those things now with the digital world that we're operating in inside of transportation, having API connectivity out there and all these transmissions, like on paper, you're always like, oh, this is just the way it is. Yeah, but it's not free, right? Like it costs lots of money out there to be able to do this. And that's the thing. Like obviously, shippers, depending on the size of them, because not all of them, some of them are very resistant to change in technology that are out there, but there are a lot of forward-thinking shippers that are very streamlined there, and they are always about that. What do you have? Do you have this? Because it's like I know like Four Kites and Project 44 are two names that have came up pretty frequently inside of my business development phone calls that are out there. Do you have these capabilities? If not, are you willing to have them? And it's like that. It's literally on their setup documentation that's out there. And again, how much money do you have to pay for that if you don't, right? And for me, it's like this is just where the industry is heading. I truly think automation is becoming more and more. I don't want to call it a threat because I don't think you can automate the entire experience. I still think that there's going to be a massive void of opportunity for people who actually know what they're doing, who can leverage technology though to go in there and grow and scale their business with a customer.
Absolutely. I mean, like, yeah, a shipment picks up, delivers, no problems. Yeah, you can automate that all day long. But what happens when that truck's going to be late or that truck gets in an accident? An algorithm doesn't know how to solve for that. It can't be on the phone with your customer saying, "Hey, I got it. I'm working on it. I'm
Yeah.
getting this taken care of. We're getting the tow truck to come in, pick up your freight, and get it to the next place. You can't automate that, and that's why you want AI and all this new fancy stuff. It's never going to replace a
Yeah.
broker, but the broker who knows how to leverage AI is going to replace the broker who doesn't know how to do anything with AI.
And I think that because like inevitably it's going to get to the point, James, where it's like, hey, we like you, but you don't have any of this other stuff. And these other brokers, we love them too. And they have all of these, fancy toys that we all want to talk about. And because at the end of the day, it's going to be a business decision, right? Because it's like, I think that there's a failure or an arrogance of a lot of people out there in the brokerage world who don't understand that shippers, regardless if they love you or not, are going to make the decision that's best for their business. And, I've lost customers for a lot of reasons out there. Some of them were my fault that I was doing that, but there's also been decisions that were made where they come in, they bring in a new team of people, they wipe out their entire network, and then you're out. You don't have any freight. And then you're looking there, and then now, like, that's eventually what it's going to get to, though, where it's going to be like, hey, I love working with you, but unless you invest in this, I can't work with you anymore because my leadership at the shipper organization is saying that the broker has to have X, Y, and Z, and if they don't, they will not have access to my freight anymore. It doesn't matter how much they love you. It's that eventually is going to come down to a dollar and cents perspective where they're going to look at the cost of transaction of every time they have to send you a shipment as a broker, because that's what I don't think a lot of brokers think about is that it costs the shipper money to send you freight, right? And it usually comes in the time of that it takes to actually tender you a shipment.
Yep. And I mean, yeah, there's all those hidden costs that you don't think about once it's set up. You don't think about the fact that EDI, the van has a cost. You don't think about any of those things, but the shipper's thinking about those things. And if maybe you haven't made the move over to API connections yet, and you're still on EDI, EDI is expensive.
Yes.
And so if you've invested in API and so you have broker X who's only on EDI and you have broker Y who's on API, which costs the shipper, it might not be a lot, but it's going to be a little bit cheaper. And that maybe that factors into their decision where your rates are the same, but your rates aren't actually the same because that transaction with broker X is going to cost more than that transaction with broker Y.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, there's so many different variables out there, and again, like people only know what they know, but like to me, this is one of those things where I truly think that everybody wants to talk about the market shift, right? Like when's the market going to shift? When's the market going to shift? I don't think a lot of people actually understand that the market is not going to be easy. It like the way that this is going to head, inevitably transportation costs are going to increase. Carriers are going to love it because they're going to start making more money. But their overhead isn't going to necessarily go down for their stuff. So they might get a little bit of, breathe a sigh of relief. But there's a lot of brokers out here who I think are celebrating a market shift that I don't understand. I don't think that they've actually worked in an alternative market, right? Because like realistically, man, the last 3 years have been easy for freight brokers. It has been very easy. 2023 was challenging from a business development standpoint because it's been easy, right? Like everyone was good with their current network. I think that that's like the number one response that I've heard is, hey, we're good with our current network because good enough is the biggest enemy out there to a freight market. And if you haven't been prospecting over these last 15 to 18 months, you're not just going to magically turn it on. Like the individuals who have been heavily prospecting, there's going to be a lot of opportunities this year from a new business development standpoint. And you got to ask yourself in those moments, though, because this is when all of those customer requirements are going to start coming to light. Because you know what? They may not have been responding to your outreaches right now, but they're going to respond because they're going to be in a tough situation. And where are you going to be? And I want people to think about this honestly. How are you going to handle it if a customer comes to you that you've been prospecting for the last 15 months? You're not developing a ton of business and they need $500,000 in cargo to move their freight. How are you going to handle that? Right? Like that's a very real conversation that is going to happen out there. Fortunately, I'm covered in that situation because, with SPI, we're good there. But that's something that I fear for a lot of people out there, James. I truly do, because those opportunities are going to come, but they're going to come with a price.
Absolutely, they're going to come with a price, and they're going to come with some things that you might have to do that you aren't thinking about right now. I mean, the the technological revolution has automated or hit a lot of industries, but it's just starting to hit transportation. I mean, you've seen, if you've been going to any of the transportation conferences over the last 3 to 4 years, it's shifted from industry stuff to technology. They're almost all becoming mini technology conferences because there is so much new stuff coming out every year, all these new things coming up. And it's, are you going to accept them and implement them in your own business, or are you going to let somebody else do it and you get left behind?
Yeah. No, and it's true, right? And I think that there's so much of that that is going on, and it's I think I will say this. I don't want to ever like sound like I'm fear mongering. Rest assured, the fundamentals of this industry are probably never going to change. At least I think that they're never going to change. You never know though. Um, but I truly think that if you need to be constantly looking ahead, and that is something that I think a lot of people are more reactive than proactive in their approach, because it's like you go back to look at the Blockbuster example. They never thought that their model was going to go away until it did. And then how many meetings did they have about this prior? And there was indecisiveness in there that said this will never happen, this will never happen. Same thing with so many different things, but it's already here in freight, right? And I think that if you're not investing in technology, if you're not looking at this from a business perspective right now, I don't want to hope that anybody goes out of business, but people are going to have a very challenging time here, a very challenging time. How are you guys assessing technology though? Because I'm assuming you guys get no less than 8,000 solicitations a day
Oh,
about.
that's half my inbox is just junk mail, people trying to sell me stuff.
How do you assess though? Like, what is that? Why you guys invest in going to as many conferences as you guys do? Is you want that note? You guys want to see it for yourself and see like,
Absolutely, absolutely. We go because, I mean, we want to keep up on everything that's happening in the
yeah,
industry, but yeah, we want to, like, having somebody. We get cold calls about technology all the time, and you don't know which ones to say yes to, which ones to say no to, and there's literally not enough time in the day to say yes to all of them.
yeah,
So when you go to these conferences, it gives you the chance to actually see the products in real life and do a quick 5 minute assessment as you're walking by a booth. You can look at their thing and be like, is this something that could work for us? Is this something that won't work for us? Is this something I need to learn a little bit more about? And we can make that assessment in a very quick manner rather than having to go through the whole sales pitch and listening to 15 minutes of back and forth before you actually get into anything about the actual product.
how important is it from a decision standpoint that when you're looking at technology, the people who have created that product have worked in transportation before?
I'd say it factors in the sense that you want to make sure that it fits how the systems actually work.
Mhm.
Because a lot of the times you'll have people who build something who have never been in transportation and they think it should work this way, but that's not how transportation works. Transportation works in a different cycle, and getting those two things to meet in the middle can sometimes be hard. So it definitely factors in, but I wouldn't say it would ever exclude
Yeah,
anything from our decision making because hey, there's new fresh eyes coming into this industry every day.
yeah.
And I mean, the way things were 15, 20 years ago are not the way things are now. So getting that fresh look at the industry can be a very beneficial thing.
Oh, James, I'm right there with you, man. I think some of these people, like obviously industry experience and having that front line, fundamental knowledge is great. But at the end of the day, man, I'm a firm believer in this, James. Sometimes a fresh perspective is the best perspective. And, because everybody gets into their routines, right? Like I think the biggest enemy out there in businesses is this is the way we've always done things. And
Yeah.
you should be looking at innovating. You should be looking at how do we invest into new ways of doing things that are going to bring optimal results and more growth opportunities to the agent network and to the people that are out there, right? Because it's like I've never met one person who's like, "Hey, I'm really planning on making less money," you know. And I think that if you're going to go out there and look into any of these the agent world at all is you need to look at what is their tech stack look like? How how open are they in showing you what their systems look like, what their capabilities are, and everything else? Because it's like if you're going to go out there and do this, because like the agent model isn't new, right? Like, but there are some just like with everything, there are some very, very good agent models, and then there's some very, very smoke and mirror agent models that are out there. And, I just talk to a lot of people. I've heard the good and the bad and the ugly of everything that's out there. But, again, I can say this for certain. You guys do not hold back on investing and giving your agents the best tools to succeed without hesitation.
Absolutely. And I mean, change can be scary. It can be risky because you don't know, like you can invest. I mean, we've had it on ourselves. We've invested in technologies that have failed and
Mhm.
it's cost us a lot of money. But if you're not willing to take that risk, you're just not going to grow because you need to be willing to, like you said, innovate, to get better, to do things differently, to do things better, because that'll help to differentiate you with your customers.
Yeah, it's I mean, it is, right? Change is scary. I mean, I remember when we back at a brokerage I used to work for when I first started, like we had switched TMSs because they built a proprietary TMS, and you literally would have thought that they dropped a nuclear bomb in the vicinity and that everyone was going to die within 3 hours because man, there was so much. But then it's like, I think like keeping an open mind with a lot of the technology and the changes that are out there are pretty crucial because once you get into it and then you realize like, oh, I was spending so much more time doing data entry, right? Or, posting a load. I have to go to this program and then that program and everything else. And then, oh, bam, now we have a TMS where you can post it directly from the TMS and everything else. Like it's just more of like the uncomfortable portion of you not knowing. But I think once most people kind of get into their routine, I'm assuming the feedback is unwaveringly positive at that point when everybody's like, hey, it's literally saving me 30 minutes a day on my daily tasks.
I mean, you're always going to have those holdouts who change just for the fact that they want to hate something.
Yeah.
But in the end, yeah, like you don't realize how much time you're spending doing things that there are things that are out there that you can invest in. And a lot of the times it doesn't cost a lot of money,
Yeah.
but it's just like turning on this widget or turning on this option in your TMS that can save you. Maybe it's only 5 minutes a day, but 5 minutes a day every day adds up really quickly.
No, it does, right? I think lost productivity is the biggest line item on most people's balance sheets that it's really hard to equate, right? Like I mean, I know that there's some people out there who think that they can, put an accurate guesstimate that's out there, but it's just like, just think about that in perspective. It's like if you're 10 minutes a day, that's like phone calls that you could make, right? And that's one other person or two other people that you're not speaking to. And then that opportunity goes to somebody else. Like I think like you need to be in an environment where I'm always like, I want to be 95% automated because 95% of my day as a broker is automated, right? It should be automated. But when it comes down to the customer experience and the carrier experience and talking to an actual human being and dealing with those issues that you're talking about, that to me should never be automated because they need to feel how much I care. Really, when
Oh,
it boils down to it, they need to feel how much I care. And again, and when you're going out there and really assessing who do you want to work with and everything else, it was what does that look like, from an infrastructure of your business? Because that's what an agency is. You are a business. You have an actual company. Your brand is out there, whether you own your own freight brokerage or you're an agent for SPI logistics, your brand is transferable. People will always remember how you were to work with, whether, wherever you were working for at the time.
yeah, well, I mean, we're talking a lot about technology, but in the end, freight brokerage is always going to be a relationship business.
Yes.
And if you can have all the tech in the world, but if you don't have the people behind it who can actually have a good relationship with the customer, you're not going to have a broker.
Yeah, and another thing too is freight brokerage it is very capital intensive, right? Business is very capital intensive, and it's one of those things that you think that, oh, all I need is a computer and a phone, and fundamentally that is all you need, but you need to be able to front hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars every single month that's out there, and if it's one of those things like you're always one bad transaction away from potentially losing everything in business. And I know that there's some steps that you take in place, but you need to look at that too. Are you with somebody who is able to front $100,000 a month to one customer in freight, right? In freight spend, because that like there's those different level customers out there where you're going to get to a point where they will only work with you if you can extend them X amount of credit. That does exist out there. And to me, it's like there's never been a hesitation anytime I've had to come to client care about anything with that. They're always like, "Yep, we got you. Yep, we got you. Yep, we're gonna do that. It checks out." And because to me, it's like, do you want to be pigeonholed as well, too, right?
Mhm. Well, I mean, it's an interesting that you say that because like when you start dealing with the bigger and bigger shippers, a lot of them they're not paying you net 30 days.
Yeah.
They
Yep.
run they're big and they get to dictate what their terms are. They're net 60, net 90. But guess what? We still pay our carriers net 30. We don't it doesn't matter what freight they're hauling. What our guarantee to our carriers is we'll pay you net 30.
Yeah.
So, like you said, we're now fronting if it's a net 60 day, we're now fronting a whole month's worth of business. Net 90 days, we're fronting 2 months worth of business. We're not passing that extra cost on to our agents. That's just a part of doing business, and that's one of the services that we offer.
That right there, alone in itself, James, is one of those things, man, where it's like that you guys take on the financial burden because that's really what it is, man. When you're talking about net 90 and you're paying your carriers within 30 days and the agent's getting paid on top of that as well, right? Like that's a big financial risk that goes on out there and you guys take it with ease, right? Like I love Friday mornings. Why is that? Direct deposits hitting every Friday,
Absolutely.
no matter what, without hesitation.
Absolutely. We're paying our commissions the next week. You get your stuff in by this Friday, you're getting paid next Friday. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter what the terms are on your customer, doesn't matter any of that. It's just we're paying you, we're paying your carriers, we're making sure that we have that A rating on truck stop. We're making sure our net days to pay is 30 so that carriers don't say no to you. Carriers are going to say yes because they know they haul an SPI load, they're going to get paid.
I would love to know the stats, James, because yes, if we get everything closed out, we get paid the next Friday, no matter what, without hesitation. I wonder how many W-2 employees out there are not paid commission until the customer pays. I would
Oh,
love
absolutely.
I would love to
Uh,
see that.
it's and there's lots of I mean there's other agency models where that is a stipulation where they don't pay commissions until they get paid by the customer. And I mean that's not how we do business. That's not how we want to do business because in the end this is a partnership. We're taking risk. You're taking a risk being a part of our network, and so we want to share in that risk together, and we want to be the best brokerage out
And I will always argue that we are the best brokerage out there, frankly, at the end of the day.
there.
And
And that's what we're striving for.
there's no doubt in my mind you guys are very agent first, giving us the best tools to succeed. And I know that is a major part of why we've been able to kind of get up and running at the level that we did, and the support's there, right? And I really, really, really want to push that the support's there when you need it, because developing business is hard. When you have no customers and you're coming in from a complete cold perspective, it takes time. And knowing that the infrastructure of a very large corporation is behind you to where you can go out there and operate, and you have the complete autonomy to run your business the way that you see fit, but you have the partnerships behind you and you're literally one phone call away. If you have any questions, and again, I cannot stress this enough, any questions at all, and you reach out to client care, it doesn't matter when it is, weekends, whatever, people are going to respond and they're going to have answers for you so you can deliver that high quality service to your customers. Because inevitably, that's all that matters in your customers' eyes. Are you fixing things? Are you making stuff happen for them? And are you easy to work with? And if you can check all of those three things off, you're going to be very, very successful out there. So with that being said, James, I want to appreciate your time, man. Like, dude, we kind of blew through this here really quick. And, I can't appreciate, I can't say thank you enough for the belief in what I'm doing from a media perspective, but also in building up my agency and everything, man. So thank you so much for that. And how does anybody reach out to you, man, if they want to find out more?
Anybody wants to have any questions or have a conversation, they can reach me by email. My email is jlemon@spi3pl.com.
Perfect. I know you guys made it this far in the episode, but if you did and you're not subscribed, do your boy a solid, you guys. Subscribe and share this out there, because at the end of the day, this is how we reach more people. But most importantly, it's how we help more people. It's because if you saw value, your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.